Hi, everyone. Let's get started with this panel. All right. My name is Flora Kim, and I work as an event coordinator for the Economics Career Office. I'm a second year studying economics and also your moderator for today. We're so excited to be hosting today's Women in Business panel with alumni representing various business backgrounds for our economics majors. So thank you all for spending time with us today. A little bit about the ECO first. The ECO was launched in April of 2013 when our director, Jen Jones, was hired to work a few days a week by then Econ chairperson, Professor Charlie Holt. The ECO was established thanks to the leadership of Professors Ken Elzinga, Charlie Holt, Ed Burton, John Pepper, and Lee Kopic. These faculty envisioned a career services office in Monroe Hall that focused on the career development of our majors and, as our bandwidth allows, prospective majors. They approached alumni, friends, and parents of the departments, and these contributors made the ECO a reality. The 20 to 30 programs we have a year, along with our advising and other programming services, are a result of their vision, leadership, and generosity. And the generosity does definitely not stop there. Our alumni are so invested in sharing their experience and giving back to the department that they show up for events like this to give their points of view. So here's how we'll run this program. Please keep your video on, but your mic off. Casual dress is completely fine here. In order to keep the speakers in at the top of your screen, you can open the gallery view and click and drag the boxes around to the position of your choice. You can also multi-pin the speakers in gallery view or switch to speaker view. As an additional note, this session will be recorded. Later in this panel, we will open up to a student Q&A. So students, when we begin the Q&A, you can either unmute yourself and ask your question, or feel free to send questions using the chat function to me. While our intention for this panel is to focus on challenges and opportunities for women in business, panelists will also give a little bit of an overview of their jobs and industries. So students are also welcome to ask questions related to their specific jobs and industries during the Q&A. Without any further delay, I will once again welcome our guests and launch this talk by asking each of you to introduce yourself and share a bit about your background, the position you're in now, and a little bit of what the position entails.
Would you like me to go first?
Sure.
Okay, great. So hi, everybody. I am Laila Kassis. I graduated from UVA in 2001. I was an economics and foreign affairs double major. I am currently a partner of Bain and Company. We are a global consulting firm. And within that, I focus on private equity. So I advise PE funds on the companies that they want to potentially purchase or invest in. And so I help them conduct due diligence on those businesses. And that means that, we're evaluating what's the market opportunity, how quickly is that market growing, how well is the company positioned in that market relative to competitors, et cetera. And within that, I focus on healthcare and software. And a lot of my work is at the intersection of the two. So I do a lot of healthcare IT work. I also do work with PE-backed portfolio companies on their strategy. So more like you might traditionally think of consulting. And it's a lot of fun. I love what I do. As a partner, I am responsible for client relationships. I'm also responsible for scoping out our work and guiding and driving the day-to-day work. And I'll have at any given time 2 or 3 different projects running and teams of managers and consultants working with me. I live in Boston. Out in the near and suburbs in the Newton Chestnut Hill area. And I have my husband, Mohammed, who owns a couple of restaurants in the area and a couple of kids. So I have my daughter, Nora, who's 8 years old, and my son, Omar, who's 6.
I'll jump in. Laila, that was an awesome introduction. I also double majored in foreign affairs and economics, so I feel that there's a really good synergy with those 2 degrees. And of course, this is my cat. His name is POTUS. He is 8 years old and a very good boy. So my name is Kaitlyn Whitman. I graduated in 2011, and I was also really heavily involved in a lot of the extracurriculars at UVA. I sent them over to Flora in my bio, and I was like, that was a really huge part of what I loved about the University of Virginia. Since graduating, I moved to the West Coast. I live in Seattle now, and I have a startup. So my company is Rainfactor. We're a full service digital marketing agency. We help new technology startups launch their e-commerce businesses for the first time and grow the brands from the ground up. We specialize in crowdfunding. So specifically Kickstarters and Indiegogo campaigns. We help these companies launch on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. We happen to be the best in the business at doing it, which is a very opportunistic growth trajectory for that business. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you both for those amazing introductions. So I guess our next question is whether the industry or the firm you currently work for, is it male dominated or female dominated, and what's the impact of those demographics? You could talk about the representation of women in this job function or your industry, or your seniority as relevant, and then maybe compare this to other work experiences you've had in the past.
Yeah, in the agency space, so among digital marketing agencies, it's all male founders, like business owners and stuff. They it's a very male dominated industry because when you go into agency work, it's very demanding on your time and you have to be really careful to kind of safeguard that. Um, and it's also involves a lot of negotiation is as you're negotiating each contract with your clients, because people come to you and they want you to provide a service for them, but you have to sort of know your worth and know your value, and that is a really really tough thing, and it kind of gives me a lot of imposter syndrome, like who am I to charge this money for what this work is. But you know a good way to overcome that is to build a strong mentorship network. People, women and men, who can advise you on what is successful for them, provide great role models, and just sort of encourage you to keep pushing and keep growing. But yeah, it's a very male dominated industry in my space.
So I think business in general is male dominated. I think consulting is no exception, but I think consulting and Bain in particular are better than a lot of other places in terms of opportunities for women and seeing women in leadership, etc. It was actually one of the reasons I chose to go to Bain versus other top consulting firms. So just to give you a sense, at the associate consultant and consultant level, so these are the roles that you get out of undergrad or out of business school, it's about 50-50, male, female. As you progress up in the ranks to manager and senior manager, associate partner, the proportion of females continues to decline. I can't remember exactly how many female partners we have globally, but I think it's close to kind of 20%, which is, obviously you'd like to see it be 50-50, but it's definitely not the case that you look around and only see men in leadership roles. There are a lot of very inspiring women at the firm, and actually as I look across our senior leadership, right, like the office leadership, the practice area leadership, the regional leadership, there are a lot of women. So Boston is one of the larger offices in the system. Our office head is a woman. The head of the North America private equity practice is also a woman. And then the head of our healthcare practice is a man. So as I look at my three leaders for my day-to-day work, 2 out of 3 of them are women. And I think that's important, right? Because it creates a potential for you to have mentors and coaches that you can relate to more, or who perhaps have gone through or are going through similar kind of life things as you have. And at Bain, we do focus a lot on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also on women and promoting women. And so we have a Women at Bain group. We actually run a global conference every other year for women managers, associate partners, and partners. And very specific goals in terms of how many, like what proportion of our leadership ranks we want to be women and what we're aiming towards. And we track our progress, right? So it's very visible, like how are we doing against this? And then we also have sponsorship programs. My sponsor is my sponsor before I was promoted to partner, was a white male, but he was so instrumental in helping me focus and helping me establish the relationships that I needed to establish in order to progress in my career. I was good at my job. I was a good manager. I had my head down, was doing my work, and I hadn't really thought about, what's my path. Or I had thought about path to partner, but I hadn't really thought about what actions do I need to take in order to get there. And he would initiate, conversations with me every once in a while, and sit down and talk through, well, what do you want to do? Like, where do you see yourself? And I was clear, I was very passionate about healthcare, and I wanted to do something in healthcare. I wasn't sure exactly what. And he would brainstorm with me what partners I should get to know. We would actually go through the online kind of people finder and talk through who I should be forming relationships with. And it was kind of an aha moment for me of like, oh yeah, I should be proactively going out there and forming relationships and not just, having my head down and doing my work. So it was so valuable. And some of the, one of the people we brainstormed in particular has been not just a fantastic coach and promoter of mine and instrumental in me getting promoted to partner, but she's also my friend. And we talk daily and we work together quite regularly. So it really has been a great support system. I also think consulting in general, on the one hand, you can think of it as a pretty intense career and one that can be straining on your personal life, especially if it requires a lot of travel. It's a client service business as well, so you really need to be on. On the other hand, it's also in a lot of ways really good for people who want to start families, who want flexibility in their career, because it's project-based. And so if you need to take time away from your job, nobody needs to fill your job. Your job doesn't go away. You just don't do a project for the next 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. And then you can come right back into your role right where you left off. There's also a lot of flexibility in terms of different roles that you can take. So, if you are a client-facing consultant, there's a lot of opportunity to do different roles at Bain temporarily. You could invest in our intellectual property development and take time away and lead a project or lead a group on that might be less client intensive and not travel oriented. Or you could do something internal with our operations for a while, or our people development. And so there is a lot of opportunity. I contrast that with other jobs that I had. I worked in private equity as a private equity investor before. And there I was always the only female investment professional. The only other women at the firm were the assistants. And then I also compare that to investment banking, which I think is also client service, but relatively more intense than consulting in terms of number of hours and the demands of the job. And there are certainly women in leadership, but the ratio is much smaller.
Thank you both so much for that insight. Just to take a quick step back, students, if you could enter in the chat your year and majors, just so our panelists can kind of get a sense of who's here. That'd be really helpful. And then while we're waiting for those students to type that in the chat. You both mentioned mentorship and like other relationships that have really helped you get to where you are. So are there any professional organizations or that you belong to or other relationships that you think are exclusively focused on women? And then how has being in these organizations or how has these relationships helped you and have been important to your career?
I'll go first again. So thinking back on it, I don't think I sought out a specific like women organization but what I did was, I moved to Seattle and I didn't know anybody. I was dating a guy at UVA and he got a job at Microsoft and I was down for the road trip, so was very excited to just move to a new city and I didn't know anybody. But what I did was I was very interested in startups and technology and entrepreneurship. And I signed up for as many meetup events as I could. And from those meetup events, I met other interesting people and I just said yes to everything. So while it wasn't specifically focused on women, I sort of worked my way through networking in general to build up those people. And something that really resonated with me, what Laila said, is the biggest question to ask is who should I know? And when her mentor asked her that, who should I know at this company? You should always be asking that. You know, um, it helps you in your network, it helps you in sales, it helps you just meet people, it helps you at parties. Honestly, like the next time you guys go to a party, say to your friend, hey, who should I know, and see what happens. But that's a really good networking tip. Something that was really formative for me and helped network me into where I am now is I took an internship at Assurion down in Dulles, and the they had just been acquired. So it used to be an electronics warranty company, and it got acquired by this big, like mobile warranty company, and the whole strategy team got cut. Like everybody that I interned for. Got completely cut, and it was a very there was a very turnover, and so I was like, okay, well, nothing for me there, I might as well just move to Seattle. Turns out the person that I interned for, we kept in touch, and he had some harebrained app idea and ended up in the Bay Area, working. And then the app development company that he said was like, your app idea sucks, but we want to hire you. And then he joined this company, and then he brought in people that used to work for him. He flew up to Seattle and like asked me to come work for him. And it was just an amazing opportunity because this was somebody who I did really good work for. I always asked for more. I always um, came up to him with new ideas, and he remembered that. And so he, while the role was very not similar to what I was doing at an internship, he knew that I was a hustler and that I could just do whatever it took to get him some wins or sales or growth. So those are my three things: is like build up your network, show up, ask who should I know. And guys, even if you like find me on LinkedIn and say, I'm interested in X, who should I know? Laila, like I want to do something, who should I, that's a really good way to get into it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I don't belong to any professional organizations. Frankly, the network I have through my company is quite vast, both within Bain, but also our clients, and particularly for me, the private equity and healthcare industries. And so I do focus on that and maintaining those relationships. Before business school, when I worked in private equity, I didn't join professional organizations per se. I did what I was passionate about. So I volunteered with an organization called the Center for Women in Enterprise, which is in Boston and helps women from more underprivileged backgrounds who want to start or run their businesses. So providing kind of free consulting advice and support. And I was really passionate about that. There was, I forget what it was called, but there was an organization for young private equity professionals in the Boston area. So I was part of that. I was part of that at the time, and it was a great way to network with people of my, roughly my age and tenure in my field. And we did events, and we would get together formally and informally. And so it was nice to have those connections and have people to kind of bounce ideas off of or interact with, etc.
Thank you both for that. Also, I think this was mentioned in not this question, but the previous one, kind of about how you could take time off. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has been a huge topic for the past year. How has this pandemic impacted women in your field or at your firms? Because I think a lot of us have read about, issues with women exiting their jobs during this pandemic. So we would love to get a little bit more insight on that.
Yeah, Laila, you go first.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think I haven't seen a negative impact at Bain. In some ways, it has been helpful because we're not traveling. And so, on the one hand, it's been harder because people lost childcare, right? Especially in the beginning of the pandemic. People lost childcare, and that's a big deal. And kids were home from school. And so there was this added strain. And I think, as much as both parents bear that, I think often it's the woman who bears a greater portion of that, regardless of what her career is, right? And so I think that certainly has created some strain. On the other hand, I think it's been easier for people to focus on work that they really want to do, irrespective of how much travel is involved in that work, because of the work from home environment. And I think the work from home environment has created more flexibility in people's schedules. That has also made things easier. So I think over the last year, a lot of people have found that kind of added layer of complexity in managing your life has been removed, at least temporarily. And I do think going forward, we will go back to travel, and we will be at client sites. I think the work will continue to demand that, but I think also perhaps not to the same degree. I think there will be a higher bar for travel going forward, and there will be acceptance of more flexibility in terms of work location. And I think that can make things easier for women, frankly. So I think there's probably more opportunity.
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, that really sucked. It was so I have a 2-year-old at home, and I also have a 2-month-old. So I was pregnant during the pandemic and had my second kid. And so it was when it first hit, when things first started shutting down, losing daycare it was really hard. And I had to lose maybe like 2 or 3 weeks of productivity just trying to find somebody else, because again, I moved away from my family, and so there was no like backup plan. And so yeah, childcare was the biggest. And there was another one of my staff who also has small kids. She requested to take, I want to say, like half days off because she found some kind of a childcare co-op. And we worked around that because when you work in digital marketing, you can kind of work from anywhere, and um, you can manage your clients as long as you kind of can get on a Zoom call once or twice a week with your client. So those are the real things that hit. Then I'll kind of put the positive things is, number one, the veil has kind of been lifted. Like, I no longer had to pretend that I didn't have kids. I don't know if that makes any sense, but um, it was just something that nobody really talked about. And also men became stronger advocates. Like, I've noticed that there are women and men on this call. And so what I'm very passionate about is sort of promoting the fact that men are great fathers too, and they also need to take that time off, and they also, need the child care. And so when that became in the forefront, I think that was a very good shift in how everybody talked about it. Because I think the availability of childcare is a really big problem. If anybody goes to work in public policy, like, you know, you've got my vote if you can help the early childcare, or any childcare in the United States. So um, yeah, that was it. More understanding and and more flexibility. So, and I think we're really comfortable. I always worked virtually. So my home office is in the Bay Area, and then I set up an office here in Seattle, so that I personally didn't have to fly to the Bay Area more often, and I could start a family. And it's all been really good.
So we want to make sure that students also get the chance to ask their questions. Students, you could either unmute yourself and then ask yourself, or if you maybe don't feel comfortable doing that, you could send your messages or your questions directly to me through the chat function, and I'll read them out. Sorry, one second. So this isn't really related to the theme of women, but while we have our experts on the line, it would also be interesting to know how COVID has affected Kickstarter or Indiegogo numbers, and also private equity.
So because China started shutting down before the rest of the world, crowdfunding also took a hit too, before the rest of the world. When you launch a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, you have to go to these manufacturers, often in Shenzhen, which is just across the border from Hong Kong, and you work with an expert manufacturing company to produce your product. When those factories started shutting down, um, everything kind of went into crisis management mode. We had to announce a whole bunch of delays. We had to um, help these entrepreneurs communicate to their backers that, there is this crisis going on and they may not get their products on time. Then the bigger companies, the like Apples, the Googles of the world, couldn't manufacture their products, and then that pushed everybody down the um, the food chain, so to speak, in terms of like production. So it was kind of a ripple effect. So now, not only did they lose their production for this product, but because they reopened at reduced capacity and they have to push out a whole bunch of iPhones, they're not going to work on, 1,000 orders for this one entrepreneur's dream. Um, and from a digital marketing aspect, though, it was a huge boom. So it was like one half of my business, which is launching crowdfunding campaigns, it was just like, you know, cut in half, cut at the knees. And then the other half of my business, which is post crowdfunding and helping them, scale and grow their online sales. For if you had product in stock, it was out off the shelves. I have a camping chair. Everybody wanted to go camping. I had an e-bike company. Everybody wanted to do e-bikes. If you know One Wheel, which is the wheel in the center and you kind of ride it like a snowboard, They are our client. Like, we manage their digital marketing. One Wheel had their best sales ever in ever, and they're just selling online. So it was this weird shift in demand for, some of these like outdoor recreational products, and then a total like shift out of the the pre-product, that crowdfunding mentality. But then in like April or July, uh, no, sorry, July or August, people started looking to crowdfunding because they understand that there's this little bit of a delay. So for crowdfunding, you purchase it now and you wait to get it while people are producing it. And that's what the whole industry is doing now. Everybody who's sold out of stock, people are now purchasing it up front and waiting to receive it, which is just the it's the same sort of reward based crowdfunding mentality, which now we're, everybody's all right. I didn't have to fire anybody. I actually hired 5 new staffers and grew our company from 30 to 35. So that was it was it was a wild ride. So yeah, that was a little bit of like on the ground reporting of economic impacts from the crisis.
From a private equity standpoint, things slowed down dramatically at the beginning of the pandemic. So mid-March to, I would say, mid-May, because I think there was a lot of uncertainty. People just didn't know how the pandemic was going to impact the economy and how it would impact different sectors. So what happened in private equity, which is different than startups, I think, because here we're talking about established companies, investment bank-led processes, et cetera. Most companies that were in the market pulled those processes. They put them on hold. And so activity just kind of ceased for a while. There was still some activity going on as investors thought about potentially investing in public markets or in debt vehicles, or continue to think about some contrarian plays. And not everything was halted, but I would say activity probably declined like 70%. And then it came roaring back. Overall, I think private equity activity for 2020 was on par with private equity activity in 2019. We just did it in 10 months instead of 12 months. And so it was an intense year with that kind of 2-month pause.
So this next question is this this next question is for a student. She would like to know if there's any organizations at UVA that you'd recommend to help in the business world, or any advice that you would give to college students that would help in the future. So I guess more generally, what did you do at UVA that you think really helped you in the business world?
I loved all of the organizations that I joined. I don't know if it's evident yet, but I'm a joiner, and I love just meeting new people and doing these things. I started out doing First Year Players, which is a theater group at UVA, and I loved just like acting, and I loved that friend group. I ended up doing publicity for that organization because I love marketing, and then I moved over to student council to do their marketing, and made a lot of really great friends through the marketing and communications committee there. The marketing and communications committee hadn't been around. It was only a year old when I joined, so it was very much of a blank canvas. I started the UVA Student Council Facebook page because it didn't exist before, and that was really cool. So it taught me a lot of the marketing, communications, how to sort of promote events and programming around grounds. I chalked everywhere, painted Beta Bridge. Like it was really, really fun. I also did the Jefferson Literary Debating Society, and I wish I had done it sooner. I did it as a third year, which was still wonderful, and I still have a lot of great memories from that group. Um, and now my friends from there are all getting law degrees, and so now I can like ask them legal advice, which is wonderful. Yeah, they're getting law degrees and they're like going into politics. So um, I think those people are really cool. And I also did another sort of just like if I had gone back and done it again, I didn't really know about the McIntyre School's whole program, and how accessible it was to college students. I took the business law class, um, which I think is still available to college students. That learning contract law um, was I use it all the time. I literally have to lecture my business partners. A contract is offer, acceptance, and consideration. I always have to say what I learned in contract law. And from there, I persuaded Eric Martin from the entrepreneurship program to let me into his class, which at the time was only available to comm students. But I was like, there's no other entrepreneurship classes. I'm taking your class. You can give me credit or you can just let me sit in your class. And he was really receptive to that, um, because I knew what I wanted. I loved using the word adamant in my communications. I don't, for some reason, that was a very effective word. I'm adamant about taking your course. Please let me in. Um, and so that's uh, part of what I loved about UVA is that if you know what you want, you can really, and they're all just people doing their job, and they love teaching you as students because you have this passion. So if you use your passion to your advantage, you can really go into really far places.
I didn't really join any business-oriented type organizations at UVA, and I'm sure there is probably a lot more there now than when I was there, because I was there 20 years ago. I did join things that I was passionate about. So part of the reason I didn't join any business oriented groups is because I didn't know that that was what I wanted to go into. I actually started at UVA with the 180s Chem series. So I'd always been a science kid, and I thought, I didn't think I wanted to major in chemistry actually, but I knew that if I did decide to do that, I should start with it, because it's, you kind of have to start and go through the 4 years if you want to get through it all. So I did, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to go into medicine. I didn't want to work in a lab. I didn't want to go into academia. And so I just stopped and shifted over to foreign affairs and then economics, where I was much more passionate. I also graduated in 3 years, so I didn't have a lot of time at UVA. That's one thing I might change if I could. At the same time, because I graduated in 3 years, I ended up interviewing for jobs during a boom time. If you guys remember, the market crashed in 2001, and I graduated in 2001. So I got my job in 2000. And I don't know that I would have gotten a job on Wall Street with my limited business background if I had been coming out a year later. So in some ways, I guess it was fortuitous, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just started interviewing. I wanted to get some real world experience. I looked into consulting. I looked at economic consulting, which was more in my wheelhouse. But I also looked at investment banking, and it seemed really exciting and something I wanted to try. It was like very cool to think I'd be on Wall Street and I'd be involved in these deals. And so I did it. And that was my business education, was doing investment banking for 2 years, and doing it in that kind of a time. And like observing people around me getting laid off, and, a tough economic environment, and like really learning really learning how to work with other people, and how to be successful, even when you feel, you mentioned imposter syndrome at the beginning, Kaitlyn, like when you feel like I have no business being here, but just, being tenacious and being tenacious and kind of being good to work with and eager to learn. And so it was a very good experience for me, and it ended up taking me down a path of kind of private equity and then eventually consulting. But while I was at UVA, I joined things that I was passionate about. I joined the Arab Student Organization. I became the president of that organization. And like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a business organization. Like, certainly there is going to be value in that. You're going to actually learn hard skills. You're going to be able to network with people who are going to be helpful to you. It's going to help you. It's going to help you figure out and be deliberate about what it is that you want to do. And it's going to help you to get those jobs. But there's also value in all of the other things. Like, one thing I regret, frankly, is not doing the Jefferson Society, right? Like, learning how to debate like that and how to speak in a way that is articulate, that is persuasive, that is a really important skill. But also leadership in general is an important skill. So joining an organization that you're really passionate about and becoming a leader in that organization is incredibly valuable. And for me, some of the stuff I learned by leading the Arab Student Organization, those are lessons that that have stuck with me to today and will continue to stick with me. And so I think that is also a piece of advice. I think joining business-oriented organizations is going to be really valuable in its own right, but also just doing what you're passionate about and being actively involved is also going to be really valuable.
I also want to underscore that, because I listed out, a ton of organizations, but the number one was the theater group that I was in. I don't know, theater kids just stick together because we're all, silly and weird. And it allowed me to, by taking that leadership role and working on their marketing, it allowed me to, be in a place with people that I loved, doing something that I loved about it. And you can join literally any organization and kind of perform those business functions for that organization, and still get, some of the skills that, frankly, as an employer, I look for. I once hired somebody out here in Seattle from the University of Washington who put, Taiwanese Student Association on his resume, talked about how he ran their newsletter program, talked about how he had to do marketing and programming and organization for his student group out here. And that, to me, is as good as a job, you know? So that was a really cool, thing. And he wasn't shy about putting it on his resume as if it were a job. So, yeah.
Kind of related to what you were just talking about, Kaitlyn, with hiring, we have another student question, which is, what are skills that have been most useful for your career, or I guess what skills or traits are most beneficial for the work in your field?
If somebody kind of knows how to build a personal I'm talking specifically in digital marketing. So anybody who wants to sort of like open up an e-commerce business, they work with my company. Anybody who has built a personal website using any of the tools out there, Squarespace, WordPress, or whatever the new one is. Um, Anybody who has a strong command of kind of the paid and analytical side of social media. So not putting social media on your resume, but saying, I know how to run an advertising campaign. I know how to analyze and find correlation. I know what conversion rate means. You can Google it. Um, and knowing some of the mechanics of marketing and having a very strong analytical background is super successful in the marketing world. So number one is learning the tools of the trade. So getting any kind of you can get Facebook certified, you can get Google Ads certified. You can get a Google Analytics certification. You know, I tell people who are mid-career and wanting to switch into marketing this advice too. So it's not like you don't need to start now. You can always do it later. Yeah.
I would say for consulting and private equity as well, it's a bit less on the technical skills or even the hard skills and more business logic. Business logic and logic overall, and an ability to think in a very structured way. Because fundamentally what we do is solve the most complex problems for our clients. Otherwise, they wouldn't be hiring us. And so the ability to take a very complex, multifaceted problem and break it down into its pieces and systematically analyze that, that is the core skill for consulting fundamentally. And then there is a whole set of people-oriented skills as well. And sure, there's analytics, right? Like, you need to know how, you need to figure out how to build a model or what have you, but like that kind of stuff you're going to learn on the job. The people that end up getting a job in consulting are very good on that kind of core structuring and analytics, and that is what we test pretty rigorously in the interviews through the case interview. And I think it's similar for private equity as well. For banking, it's a little bit different. It is a little bit more on the technical skills and understanding what banking is, though in my experience, those interviews were much more to test how sharp are you and how well and quickly will you learn and how are you to work with, and less so like they knew I didn't have a business background, so they weren't testing me on critical finance skills when I was interviewing for banking.
While you're looking at the next question, I also want to say customer service skills. And, you know, I took a job in serving in school. I worked at a bar that no longer exists. It was, Laila would know it, it's Martin's, but sadly they shut down. And so knowing how to talk to customers, knowing how to deal with people who are having a bad day, knowing how to, like, you know, put on some pants and just deal with whatever you're doing because you have to be customer facing. That also is super valuable. And so I would not knock anybody who has like serving experience or cashier experience or anything there you're really having to interface with and resolve customer stuff as well. And I know that's not like an, you know, something that you're thinking about now, but it's also super helpful and nothing to be ashamed of. Like, it's, in fact, I look for it sometimes.
So this is another question from a student. What are your favorite and least favorite parts about your jobs? Or I guess most.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
First. Yeah.
Go
No,
ahead,
Laila,
Kaitlyn.
you're gonna go first.
Okay.
I'm still thinking.
Okay, sure. So I think my favorite, there are several favorite things to the job. One is I really love the industries and the types of work that I focus on. So like fundamentally, I work in healthcare and I'm very passionate about that. And like the healthcare system in the US is messed up, let's face it, right? And so working in the midst of that and understanding all of the different stakeholders and how they fit together and how the trends are evolving and thinking through how can we actually evolve the system such that you know, patients who need care are getting the right kind of care at the right time, at the right cost, with better outcomes, better experiences, et cetera, right? Like fundamentally, that is the ultimate goal. And working in the midst of that is very energizing for me. And as I've progressed in my career, I've had the opportunity to become more specialized and develop more expertise. So being in the room with senior leadership teams with investors who are frankly shaping the healthcare landscape in the US is very energizing for me. And with that, I also love working with people. I'm very much a people person. So, as much as I love the flexibility of work from home, I do look forward to getting back to the office and seeing people live and having events that are not on Zoom, et cetera. And so I love the fact that what we do is work in teams. In fact, I mentioned earlier that consulting can be a great place for someone who wants some flexibility from a work-life standpoint. And one thing I did after I had my second child is I offered to be the consulting program manager for the Boston office. It was an opportunity for me to see how we run our operations and be involved in the professional development of our consultants and their staffing and career development, et cetera. And that role involved me being in meetings for like 9 hours a day. And I loved it. It was just very energizing for me, because not only was I interacting with people all day long, but I was doing it in order to run our business and to manage the development of our people. And so that was also very energizing to me. So those are the things I love about my job. There's not a lot that I don't like, to be honest. I will say, like, it is client service and it is intense. And I've been fortunate to build a really nice base of clients for myself, such that I have more business than I can handle. And so that is a point of stress at times, because I don't want to say no to any of my clients, but I can't serve all of it directly myself. So I do spend some time working with our practice leader and office leadership to figure out what can we serve, what can we delay, what do we need to say no to, and for what we are going to serve, if I can't directly serve the day-to-day, who can I partner with who could do that? I mean, that in some ways that's also energizing, and it's a great problem to have, because it means I get to work on the stuff that is most relevant for me, where I'm best suited, and hand off some of the other stuff. But it also is a little bit of a source of stress, because there's just a lot of work, right? So it's good and bad.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. When you're working in digital marketing, my co-founder always has a saying, Janelle, she always says, the internet never sleeps. So you never know, if you just spend one more hour, are you going to get another client win? And frankly, when I was your age, I didn't know how to set those boundaries. And people that I work with, one of my coworkers I just had a conversation with, she is 55 years old and still is working on setting boundaries. And it's going to be a constant. It's going to be constant throughout your career. It starts even in high school, because everything is demanding on your time. Knowing what is the greatest return on your time. So in marketing, we always do return on investment or return on ad spend, but you want to maximize the return on effort, really. So if this takes a small amount of effort, but you expect a big return, do those, get yourself some quick wins. I've had sleepless nights. I've had clients call me and berate me because this is their baby. I'm working on startups. This is their business and this is their life. This is their retirement savings. And it is just a dud product, or for some reason, manufacturing costs are too high. We can't get it down. And, you know, feeling so much empathy for that entrepreneurship struggle, but not being able to do anything about it is so tough. Um, but on the upside, I get to share in their wins. I get to be there when they make their first $1 million. I get to help celebrate when we make some discovery that turns this, slowly declining doom to failure to, oh my goodness, turns out that it's not parents, it's like drone enthusiasts who love this product. And so finding those wins, it is so, I have to say it's addicting. And which is why I've been able to do it for 6.5 years, um, on that level. But the best advice is, and this is when I had kids, and I said, Mom, I'm calling my mom and I'm crying, who knows what it is. She said, Kaitlyn, you are not put on this earth to make Rainfactor, which is my company, the best it can be. You are put on earth to be the best person you can be. And you really have to think about, what it takes to maximize your own happiness. And I, nobody can deny that me having to step away from the company to take care of my two kids when I first gave birth, but that the company bottom line did take a hit because it's better when I'm spending time on the company. But I would feel so empty and I would feel resentful and have I would not be my best self at that company if I didn't take that time off to focus on my family. And as a result, I'm happier, healthier, stronger, and can bring my best self to work every day. So when you're thinking about that, especially if anybody's thinking about going into entrepreneurship, there's some dark times and there's some struggles and there's going to be some real conversations about, um, will there be a bottom line hit if I step away from the company? And my big revelation was yes, but it is better if I'm there and I'm best if I do this. So really think about that because it's all just people trying to figure stuff out. And I know we're at time, but I came here also, I wanted to say two things. One is the biggest impact I ever had getting my first job was at my internship. There's two people who shared their salary with me. And I know it's a really small thing and people don't like talking about salaries, but um, if you guys ever want to help each other, lift each other up, share your salary, men and women. Um, and I remember it to this day. So I talked to one guy who, again, they were the year before me. So this was, again, during that whole takeover, like Ashurion, I wasn't able to get a job because the people that I liked weren't there. So I wasn't going to work for that company. But the woman who got hired, sorry, her first job, she got 40K, and she shared that with me. And I had no idea. I didn't know what to put my value worth. And so when I asked for my first job, I asked for 45K, as a result of just knowing what she asked. Then the guy, at the same time, the guy told me that he, at his first job, got 75K. And it was because he told me, Kaitlyn, I could work for any of these consulting firms. I have a business degree, which I didn't have a business degree, so I was like, I don't know. Um, I could work for any of these consulting firms. I could easily be making more, and I know my value. And so he got a 75K offer right out of school. So there were different teams, there were different things, and so I knew the range and I knew the reasoning for it. But I don't know if the woman who got 40K knew that somebody in the same internship program got 75K in their first job. And so, I mean, and I was happy making 45K for the company that I ended up with at Seattle. I was working a receptionist job at a real estate company. That's a whole different story, but I was a receptionist at a real estate company and it was 45K. So that's, if it's 9:04, I know some people have a place to be, but if I ever had to leave you with anything, it's like just share your salary, It's as an employer, I don't like, you don't need to know my company's salaries because that's how we keep leverage. But yeah, it's and nobody's gonna be mad about it, because if I shared this to you, and who are you mad at? Are you mad at the guy who shared his salary, or are you mad at the company? So think about that. especially guys, if you feel guilty for making more than your female, or potentially making more than your female counterparts. So that's all I had to say. That was my one like thing.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, as you mentioned, it is 12:04 and we want to make sure that our students have enough time to get to their office hours also. So I think this is a good place to end the panel. Thank you students for attending, and also to our alumni for providing their valuable insight. If your office hours begin at 12 p.m., please stay on the Zoom call. And if your office hours session doesn't start now, you can leave the Zoom call and then enter again when it's your time using the same Zoom link. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you guys. This was really helpful. I mean, you know, we all want to be here.
Thank you so much, Laila and Kaitlyn. This was a terrific conversation. I mean, you could see we need more time, obviously. and we just had, you know, the two of you, but Flora will be following up asking for your feedback, or feel free to share it with us right now. I know we do have students waiting for office hours, but if there's something that you want to say right now, we don't want to hold you up from doing that.
Okay, one last thing is like, look around the room. This was advice given to me. Look around this room. Everybody who's on this Zoom call wanted to be here. So everybody on this Zoom call, you should know. So look down this name list and, you know, find each other and just say, hey, it's great to connect with you. We were on the entrepreneurship career, or sorry, the economics career Zoom call. Like, and that's what I do with every room that I'm in. Every room that you show up to, and if it's not like you have to be there, everybody wants to be like, this is a Friday. Well, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning for me. And this is, you know, and Laila's giving her time. Everybody wants to be here. And so you should know these people. Just so talk to each other is my last piece of advice.
Thank you so much. And Laila?
All right.
Good?
Yeah, no, great. I will say it's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the office hours.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to move you into your space in just a minute. Kaitlyn, we'll follow up with you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.